Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Jai Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari
Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari
Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana
Yashodanandana Prajadana Ranjana
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana
Yashodanandana Prajadana Ranjana
Yamuna Tiravanachari
Yamuna Tiravanachari
Yamuna Tiravanachari
Yamuna Tiravanachari
Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
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 Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
We're continuing the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 17, 1-17. Shrvatang Sakatah Krishna Purnya Shravana Kirtanah Hridyantasto Hipadrani Vidunoti Suhritsatam. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, Supersoul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Messages of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, are non-different from him. Whenever, therefore, offenseless hearing and glorification of God are undertaken, it is to be understood that Lord Krishna is present there, in the form of transcendental sound, which is as powerful as the Lord personally. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Shikshashtaka declares clearly that the holy name of the Lord has all the potencies of the Lord, that he has endowed his innumerable names with the same potency. There is no rigid fixture of time, and anyone can chant the holy name with attention and reverence at his convenience. The Lord is so kind to us that he can be present before us personally in the form of transcendental sound, But unfortunately, we have no taste for hearing and glorifying the Lord's name and activities. We have already discussed developing a taste for hearing and chanting the holy sound. It is done through the medium of service to the pure devotee of the Lord. The Lord is reciprocally respondent to his devotees. When he sees that a devotee is completely sincere in getting admittance to the transcendental service of the Lord, and has thus become eager to hear about him, the Lord acts from within the devotee in such a way that the devotee may easily go back to him. The Lord is more anxious to take us back into his kingdom than we can desire. Most of us do not desire at all to go back to Godhead. Only very few men want to go back to Godhead. But anyone who desires to go back to Godhead, Sri Krishna helps in all respects. One cannot enter into the kingdom of God unless one is perfectly cleared of all sins. The material sins are products of our desire to lord it over material nature. It is very difficult to get rid of such desires. Women and wealth are very difficult problems for the devotee making progress on the path back to Godhead. Many stalwarts in the devotional line fell victim to these allurements, and thus retreated from the path of liberation. But when one is helped by the Lord himself, the whole process becomes as easy as anything, by the divine grace of the Lord. To become restless in the contact of women and wealth is not an astonishment, because every living being is associated with such things from remote time, practically immemorial, and it takes time to recover from this foreign nature. But if one is engaged in hearing the glories of the Lord, gradually they realize their real position. By the grace of God, such a devotee gets sufficient strength to defend himself from the state of disturbances, and gradually all disturbing elements are eliminated from their mind. Jai. Shri Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Om Gyana Tirantasya Gyanam Shakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kridasindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna. So in the previous verse, we heard about developing a taste. And Prabhupada mentions that here, that taste is developed by rendering service to devotees. That service is our Shushusha Shadadhanasya. Gives Vasudeva Kata Ruchi, gives taste for hearing the Kata. Hearing the Lord's names, hearing about his form, hearing about his pastimes, hearing the philosophy. And so in this way the logic is flowing. So we serve the devotees, we develop taste for hearing and chanting. And that hearing and chanting is described very succinctly here as purifying the heart of the devotee. Because Krishna is dwelling in the heart, right? We're actually sharing space. Ultimately, it's his space. Mm-hmm. It's not our body. It's Krishna's. Everything is Krishna's, including the body, and we're sharing, and we're part and parcel of Krishna, and he's also there in the heart next to us as Paramatma, witnessing everything, and he's giving advice if we listen, and he's observing, and there's a way in which that form of the Lord is reciprocating with us most directly. So the hearing and chanting process actually attracts his attention. And he reciprocates with that by purifying our heart. And that purification is manifested, is described here as a purification of cleansing desire for material enjoyment. Vitunoti suhrit satam. Apadra means that which is not auspicious. Right? Abhadra means auspicious, and abhadra means not auspicious. And that's what is the word that's used here for the things in the heart that are cleansed. The Prabhupada translates it as the desire to enjoy matter. It's inauspicious to have a desire to enjoy matter. Why is it inauspicious? Because it's foreign to the soul. It's like if an eternal living entity develops a taste for the temporary, that's inauspicious, because then they tie themselves to the material cycle. And so when he talks about sexual attraction or wealth or whatever, these kinds of things, he says it's not unusual, it's not astonishing that a living entity is attracted to these things, because they have been in that association for a long time. and developing different kinds of attraction to it. And that's basically all abhadra. It's all inauspicious. When we're in the mode of passion, it seems like a really good idea to chase those things. It seems like that's where happiness is going to come from. And although there's no happiness in it, there is pleasure temporarily in the short term. There's payoff up front, and then you pay a price for it later. That's greater. That's the mode of passion. It feels good at the beginning, and then it feels terrible later. And so there's a way in which it can be difficult to swallow the idea that this is abhadra. This is actually not in our best interest. So if you think about the mission of a spiritual message of any tradition in any language, whether it's in a book or a devotee is saying it, it always has to include this thing of actually being attached to the world, and the enjoyments of the world is not good for you. And so therefore it has a challenge of trying to get that message across and having it be believable. So how do you actually help somebody who's convinced that that's what's good for them to understand that it's not what's good for them? And so there are different tactics. One tactic is to give them some appeasement of temporary things, and if you practice spiritual life, you'll have more of these things. You can take birth in a better situation. And actually the Vedas do that. They partly do that, is that, okay, you can have more wealth and more sense gratification. Like, all the things you're enjoying here, you can have it way better in the heavenly planet. Just be pious, and you should listen to Bhagavatam, and listen to the Lord's name, and it'll help you do that. And it's like, okay, that's one perspective, and it's a gradual process that way. Another is the nivritti marg. That's pravritti, and nivritti is disengagement, is encouraging disengagement and encouraging stillness. And ultimately, the bhakti path is really not about just disengagement. It's not just about engaging in sense gratification and gradually over so many lifetimes getting purified. It's about getting a taste of what it's like to engage in bhakti, to engage in service. And that's something you can't completely explain to somebody. Although the Bhagavatam does that, the Nectar of Devotion and other Shastra, they explain it. There's a science to bhakti. But ultimately we want to give people an experience, because when they experience it, then the super soul in the heart, who is the benefactor means one who does good. The benefactor of the truthful devotee, they cleanse that desire. The Lord cleanses the desire from material enjoyment. And when one experiences that, then one starts to feel some relief. Even if there's not the complete development of pure love for Krishna. That's the ultimate auspicious thing. It's pure love. That's the ultimate thing. Even if that's not there, that's not a cheap thing. It doesn't happen right away. We notice that the urges, the material urges, start to decrease. We become less pinched. And there's less inauspiciousness, and that feels good. We call that being free from stress, feeling good. Oh, I don't know, I like going to these kirtans. It feels nice. And we can't explain what's happening. Well, what's happening is that the Lord in your heart is witnessing you hearing and chanting, and all that inauspicious attachment to wealth and sex and pride and all the weird things that have nothing to do with the soul becomes a little bit slackened, a little bit looser, a little bit less tight and pinching and hot and burning, and all of a sudden we feel, I don't know why, but I feel better. And that's what's happening here. And so the Lord is reciprocating. And therefore that's primary evidence for the hearing and chanting process. Because if we want to come to pure love for Krishna, at least we have to become purified of these external things. As Prabhupada points out, you can't come to Krishna with these external things weighing on the heart. So the process of bhakti itself purifies one of these things. Right? And he uses the word sin. You can't come to the Lord when you have accumulated sin. Of course, the definition again of sin in bhakti is whatever takes you away from God. So if that's attachment to impious activities or attachment to pious activities, if one is attached to being good and moral and having good karma and enjoying the results of that, that's also an impediment. In that context, that's also sin. It's basically like the desire to put blinders on, pretend that he doesn't exist, and I'm an independent unit. And whether one is an independent unit in a rough and vicious way or in a more polished way, that's basically sinful. That's basically distractive from our real identity. And as long as we're indulging in that, it's difficult. It's very difficult to come to Krishna, you know? So this is talking about that purifying process of hearing and chanting. And you can see, when the hearing and chanting is done, Prabhupada puts it offenselessly, with attention, and with a desire to try to be attentive and with the right internal conception that Krishna is God and I'm a servant and I have respect for the devotees and like that, then very quickly the heart gets purified. You can see when chanting and hearing is done in that way, you know, if it's done like with Shastra, we become purified in our intelligence and we feel good and we feel uplifted. If it's done in our kirtan and japa, the same thing. And also you'll find when this kind of chanting happens, particularly I've noticed it in kirtan and japa, if it's done offenselessly, then things kind of come to the surface in the heart. The inauspicious things can actually come to the surface. And it can be a little bit confusing because it's almost like, oh no, am I doing this wrong? Because now I'm starting to feel lust and anger and fear and anxiety. And it's actually like, you know, when you're trying to make ghee, you cook the ghee down, you cook the butter down, and all the impurities in the butter come to the surface and you scrape them off until you have nice, clear, golden ghee, which has a completely different effect on the body than butter. And so similarly, when we're in that fire of kirtan, fire of good quality japa, we may notice some things about ourselves. Krishna brings it to our attention, and that's like the thing coming to the surface and getting cleared off. And so it's important to not identify with it and be like, okay, all right, anyway, yeah, I take ownership that it came from me, and I'm also not going to engage with that, you know, thing. I'm just letting it go to Krishna. Please take it. And that the process is working and that happens, you know, we're getting purified. So this is our practice, is to be convinced that hearing and chanting is useful, to develop a taste for it by serving devotees, and to apply that taste by actually hearing and chanting with attention and respect. And trusting in Krishna, who's sitting right next to us in our heart, we get the good advice, the support, the purification to actually become unburdened and free, liberated, and come bit by bit closer to him by that hearing and chanting, so that even in the early stages we become that much more free of the inauspicious things, and in the later stages of chanting we actually develop more and more an intact relationship with Krishna, where we are reciprocating with him and feeling his presence personally, and there's that strong relationship of service that actually blossoms into rasa. You know, rasa that's described in Nectar of Devotion, rasa of serving Krishna in this way or that way, which is a very high thing, but it's actually what we're going for. And in the meantime, you can't get to that. If we have so much rasa with material life, it's artificial. If we have so much rasa of attachment and you know, engagement and having a chip in the game with the material paradigm, you can't actually fill that cup with spiritual rasa if it's already filled with material rasa. So being purified of that is Krishna actually making space for us to come to him, because it's actually completely foreign. We don't need asangohyayam purushaha. The Vedanta Sutra says we actually have no relationship with matter. We have no sangha here with matter. We have sangha with Krishna, and we can see everything as part and parcel of relationship with Krishna. We have no essential relationship with the material world. And when we start to feel the truth of that, it's actually a relief. So, just to summarize, the hearing and chanting process is nourished by service to devotees, and Krishna, who's actually letting us share space in the heart next to him, reciprocates with that hearing and chanting by purifying us of inauspicious attachment to matter. And he's our benefactor. He does good that way. He actually benefits us through that process and helps us to develop space to develop attachment to him. And talk a little bit about the process of recognizing when we're getting purified internally of our lower natures, of our attachments, our material our material disease, the material patterns that can come up in our bhakti, that these things come up and we just let them go intentionally to Krishna. Just like when butter is cooked down, the impurities that rise to the surface are removed and you have nice ghee at the end. So that's what's happening, that we're being put in a fire and we're getting purified. The fire is hearing and chanting. So let's take any reflections on that. Any comments or questions? There's a lot in this verse. And it probably has a lot of things. You could practically give a class on Paramatma, a class on the word benefactor. The truthful devotee. What is a truthful devotee? Like it's just this focus on, well, if you're just sincere and you're not trying to put on a show, you're a sincere, truthful devotee. The Krishna reciprocates with that. He doesn't care about your position. He doesn't care about your externals. He cares about the internals. Are you actually doing it for real? Are you actually trying to chant with attention? And nothing can replace that. Nothing can hide that. So there's a lot in this verse. The purification of inauspicious things, which are virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Actually, the hearing and chanting process is the highest piety. So let's take any comments, questions, reflections.
I love this verse.
Yeah.
I love this verse.
What do you love about it?
What you spoke about, the analogy of cooking ghee and heating up, it's the similar quality that name of tapas in yoga, discipline, but also it's fire, right? And it's like that. We have to be put under the fire in order to grow and for the impurities to come out, as you said, and then to become this golden ghee.
Yeah.
That's so nourishing for the body. So I really appreciated that. And also this in the purport, Prabhupada said that really struck me. But when one is helped by the Lord himself, the whole process becomes as easy as anything by the divine grace of the Lord.
Yeah.
And, as you were speaking about, it's the reciprocity in relationship. And then by sincerely serving, by trying to hear and chant with attention and link to our japa affirmation of prioritizing japa in your day. I just noticed that when I don't do that, and when I'm fitting my japa in, or if I'm feeling rushed or overwhelmed, then I don't necessarily feel that divine flow.
Yeah.
Right. And it can feel
no longer
it doesn't feel easy.
Everything.
Yeah. And it certainly doesn't feel easy. And so when we allow the Lord to help, when we allow Krishna to help us, and when we allow him to help us, it's like allowing him to see us. And when we allow him to see us, it's when we're sincerely serving, chanting, and hearing. So this emphasis on having a strong relationship of service, which develops into the rasa with Krishna, which is so much more enjoyable and pleasurable and longer lasting and truthful and eternal than the rasa with the material world. But my mind will trick me into wanting the rasa of the material world.
Yeah.
And so I just found it very refreshing, a beautiful reminder. And I'm sitting and holding this when I sincerely sit with Krishna or my service and my practice, and then that divine flow comes easily.
Yeah. It's not actually that we are purifying ourselves. It's not actually that we're doing bhakti. That's a karmic understanding, a misunderstanding. And we're actually letting Krishna in.
And letting him
do it and giving him permission to do that. And opening ourselves. It's very submissive. It's very like, please come,
Mm-hmm.
We're not in the masculine role. We're not leading and dominating.
Mm-hmm.
We're like receiving him. And it's actually it's important to remember that, because in our conditioned state, we consider ourselves a doer. And so if I think like, well, why do I have to chant early in the morning? Or why do I have to prioritize this? I could just fit it in there. I've got a plan. I've got it all figured out. That's us being in our, on the doer mode. And the reciprocation is we feel that the ease isn't there.
Yeah.
Because the surrender is pinched. It's less surrender. And so Prabhupada said, quoting the Bible, he said, the Bible says God helps those who help themselves. You should understand, he said, helping yourself means putting yourself in front of transcendental sound vibration, right? So if you want to help yourself, the best way to help yourself is to choose to put yourself in front of that transcendental sound vibration of your japa, of kirtan, of the Bhagavatam. And if you can front load your experience of your day with that, it makes things easier. I just don't know what to tell you. I've been trying every other way for so many years to try to outsmart Krishna, and it just doesn't work. If I actually can't because of circumstances beyond my control, that's one thing. But if I can and I don't, I always feel that the ease is retracted to some degree, because it's a relationship, and Krishna wants to give himself to us, but he's not going to force himself on us. That's not love anymore, right? There has to be like, I choose you, Krishna. I actually choose you. And choosing means I'm going to do this. I'm going to chant Hare Krishna. I'm not going to outsmart myself. I'm going to get out of my own way and just do this simple thing. I'm going to hear the Bhagavatam. And it just works. Krishna just reciprocates with that. It's really sweet and simple. And in this way, we learn over and over again, oh yeah, bhakti isn't complicated. It isn't like I have to reinvent the wheel, or I'm. So thanks for that reflection. And when we feel that there's less ease, or you feel, it's important to notice like what's happening with you and Super Soul around your sadhana, because that's a really classic place where he reciprocates with us. It's easy not to notice him in different places in our life. But in our sadhana, it's like that living ground of, I'm trying to connect with you. So see how he reciprocates with your efforts. And what I find is quality and quantity of japa is like the main thing. Really, you get so much. It's like an 80-20 rule. There's so many parts of life where 80% of your results are in 20% of the activity. The 20% that gives 80% of your results is japa, right? And the other 20% of your results comes from the other 80% of things you do. And everything we're doing, including serving devotees, is trying to create taste in that japa, so we can actually really let it in, really receive that holy name offensively and yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
More comments or reflections or questions?
Yeah, I'll comment. I found it so interesting, the progression of learning how to chant, and that now chanting regularly, as I've been doing for a long time now. If you break it down, the way I look at it is, at least for my experience, it's 2 hours and 15 minutes that I'm not ruminating and replaying anxieties and things in my head about my material life, right? So putting aside all the wonderful things that it is to get closer to bhakti, it's like cognitive therapy to get my brain to rewire how I think, and once I really started getting into chanting, it's amazing how I've been able to sort of relax more and really truly surrender to let life play out, rather than trying to think that I am the controller, that I have to get in there and do this and do that, make this happen and make that happen. And once I really get aligned with that I'm not the controller, and that chanting does make me happier, then life's been starting to play out in a much more beautiful way than I ever could have imagined. And I guess that's that reciprocity, is that I'm surrendering to the fact that that Krishna is really in charge and I'm not. And boy, does he have much more beautiful plans for me than I thought I did.
He is more powerful, more benevolent. He's so many steps ahead of us. And japa and our sadhana is our place for learning surrender. Because actually, surrender can be enacted at moment to moment in life. But for the conditioned soul who's so used to the other way, then the sadhana is a place where we deliberately, as you said, like I just get to not have to do the usual material anxiety thing that my mind always wants to do the other hours of the day. Like when I'm chanting, I actually am intentionally not doing that. I'm intentionally just trying to be with Krishna. And that intention, like whatever the length of our japa practice or our sadhana, hearing and chanting, which includes our, relationship with Shastra, that time is intentionally running that experiment. And yes, what you're saying, I also echo it, that it informs us that, oh, surrender is possible and it feels good. And the other, 22 hours of our day just become better. That's the magic. There's nothing else that actually pays off like serving Krishna, because Krishna is in everything. So if you serve Krishna one time, he never forgets it. If you serve Krishna every day, you feel it every day. And if you dedicate yourself to serving Krishna in a focused way every day, then it becomes very easy to see how the ease that's there in that process of our sadhana can be available in the middle of any kind of crazy situation, because Krishna is also in that crazy situation. And it's a lesson that has to be, at least for myself, repeated daily. Even though yesterday was completely clear, I wake up and I have to relearn that lesson by engaging in my sadhana. I'm like, oh yeah, here it is again. Yeah, this works. And it just makes everything flow. So as Prabhupada says, it becomes easy as anything. More reflections?
Yeah, it was just like the two things that stood out to me that, like, when I really think about what you said about Krishna is sharing space with us, how he's dwelling in the heart and he's sharing space with us.
Yeah.
Because like all of, our life, it's like, oh, our spaces, and then you're inviting these things in. But no, he's sharing space with us. I was like, wow. Just to like sit and think about that.
Yeah. It's his space. He just lets us have some of it. But in the conditioned state, you can see like there's just so much indignation and ego. It's like, this is my whatever. It's like, it's not yours. It's all a gift. So it's nice because in devotion, we realize that, and it's humbling, and it's also very freeing. Like yesterday, I went to play some soccer. So first game of the pickup game of the year. And I was thinking, okay, my goal from this game is to run around and get some exercise, and also to not get injured, because I have a very important yoga coming up that I don't want to be hobbling around for. So our team was crushing it. We were up 5 goals. And there was this guy on the other team who was getting really unhappy with his own teammates. And he was like getting in a place I've seen before that can lead to ugly things. And I was thinking, I don't want this to go there. I was trying to calm him down, wasn't working. And so he took a shot on net from like the midfield. And as he was coming, I thought, I can stop this. And then I felt another thought come, like, no, let it go. Let him have it. And it didn't feel like it was coming from me. And I can promise you, my soccer instincts are not to listen to let it go ever. But because I'd made that intention going into the game, this is what I'm here for, I realized it was super stolen. Let it go. It was a goal, and his demeanor completely changed. And what became like a possibility, this guy could start a fight. He could go in too hard. He could break somebody's ankle. Like I was like, I'm not worried anymore, because he got his baby got his bottle. We won anyway. And I listened to Super Soul. Why did it happen? Because he reciprocated with my desire to be of service. I was thinking, I'm not here to fulfill my desires. I got to keep this body healthy, but I also want to get back to my service and be in one piece. And that's a devotional desire that he reciprocated with. And it's just a tiny example of, we can see how he reciprocates with the service attitude. So it's actually his space. It's his body, it's his everything. And the more we can recognize that, the more free we are. Otherwise, we're a slave. Like that guy, he's a slave. Like, I got to score. And there's no happiness in that. Whether you score or don't score, win or don't win, there's no happiness in it. It's slavery. Slavery to the false ego, to the material nature. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And to me, it just then makes sense. Like if I'm wondering like, oh, how did this show up, in my life, or how did this, but it makes sense thinking of it this way. It's like, oh, of course. So
Jai.
yes, thank you.
Any more?
Hare Krishna. I was thinking about there's a couple of things I was thinking about as I was listening to you. The first thing is about like the truthful devotee. I was thinking about that and just thinking about, of course it means like integrity and it means all these amazing qualities, but also I've been thinking for like, a little while now about following your own heart and your devotional service and your devotional practices and doing what's right for yourself, like in your own path. And it's no news to anybody, but I've been like merging my life with another devotee who's incredible and amazing and also has different, you could probably hear him chanting downstairs, like just different a different sadhana than I have, right? And values different things than I value. And so really at this phase in my bhakti, returning to what's truthful for me and making sure that I'm staying, rooted in my truth and what Krishna is calling me forward in. And it's really important to not lose sight of that, when we're on this path, the individualism of this path and how beautiful it is that it's created for us in this reciprocal nature. And it's only through being fully honest that we can actually hear what's intended for us, like to hear his messages in our japa or in our own chanting or, in the reading in the Shastra and just really absorb that. And this verse was really important to me today, and I'm really thankful. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Beautiful.
It's Krishna, he's reciprocating with us individually. It's an interesting thing because the best managers and organizers and leaders are the ones who bring out the individual spontaneous and voluntary service. And I use those words because Prabhupada used those words in a letter, I think. He said the art of management is the art of bringing out individual spontaneous and voluntary service. And when that comes up, you want to fan that spark, right? And let it grow. And it's, like we're creating some structure so it doesn't completely fly off into the stratosphere. But there's actually so much room for people to develop in the relationship with Krishna within the bhakti world, within the 9 angas of bhakti, within the mission that Prabhupada gave us, and it's this art of like how to help people come along and also not make them feel like they have to follow your idea of how it has to look like exactly, so they can become they can think on their own, right, and not just be followers. And also that they can, like as you said, reciprocate with Krishna in their heart, and therefore feel satisfied, because there's something that there's a part of us that can't be satisfied unless we're really doing that, whatever it is, following that side of that branch of bhakti that's really calling to us in our heart. I remember when I first started giving classes, I was uninitiated. I was not even a first initiated devotee, and I asked my spiritual teacher, I said, I really feel like giving Bhagavatam class. And I know that's for, in the temple, I know that's for initiated devotees. Like, what should I do? And he encouraged it and he facilitated it, and because he saw that was something that I was, well, first of all, it's a devotional desire. And second of all, it's something that for whatever reason I could develop into. Even though it didn't make sense on paper. It really didn't for someone as junior as me. But that's not what bhakti's about, what works on paper. So there's just a way to encourage, and I got that from him, and I've gotten it over the years. And so we have to receive them. We also have to give it to ourselves and not outsmart ourselves, not like, in the name of submission and following, not actually listen to all the voices internally and externally and reach a consensus. It's always easier to listen to one voice and be like, okay, it's just one way, but that can lead to fanaticism. It can lead to like drowning out consensus and nuance, and it can lead to problems. It's always easier to just have a tyranny, whether it's the tyranny of our mind or the tyranny of your guru, or the tyranny of, it's just like easier. But yeah, I'm hearing like being sensitive. It's an art. Okay, Martin, you want to anything?
I'll just add a quick, especially these types of purports always make me reflective on my life and stuff, like my past and stuff like that. And like, in the last sentence there, he says, by the grace of God, such a devotee gets sufficient strength to defend himself from the state of disturbances. And gradually all disturbing elements are eliminated from his mind. And I just think back, even, I mean, a year from now, the types of disturbances and the magnitude of them in my mind, and how much they've come down. You compare that to 5 years ago, 10 years ago, those disturbances have come down. It's only because of this path. It's only by his grace, right? And it gives me intense gratitude and also intense hope for the future as well. It's like, oh, it's only going to these disturbances if I, as he says, be engaged in hearing the glories of the Lord. And as I continue to gradually realize, it's like it's only going to these disturbances and this reattachment, the cutting of the knot, all the things we've been talking about past couple weeks. It's only up. It's only up if you stay, right? Like the line only goes up. Yeah.
It's very gives a lot of hope. Jai. Okay,
Pennsylvania.
from Pennsylvania, tuning in.
I just have one. So, I always think about that we're part and parcel of Krishna. And then, Prabhupada explains things and he had this one line I don't know, it just like really resonated with me. It says, the Lord is more anxious to take us back into his kingdom than we can desire. Even though we're part, Krishna owns us, like he owns all this.
Yeah.
But he still wants us to come back and he's anxious for us to come back. And it's like we're fighting the fight but if we just stop and listen in time here.
Yeah, bhakti is a descending process. And so what's descending is, among other things, the Lord's desire to take us back. Because even if we don't have that desire yet, he does. He actually leads in the relationship because he's the man. He actually is the boss. He knows so much more than we do. He's in a situation where he's not conditioned. We are. And bhakti means like cracking that open a little bit and receiving some of that desire that's coming down. He has a purpose for us. He has a plan. He has much better ideas than we have for ourselves, as somebody said, way better ideas. So it's kind of like I don't know, it's very touching to hear that the Lord is more anxious to bring us back than we can desire. I mean, because he can desire much more than we can. He has infinite capacity and we have the tiniest bit. I think in a conditioned state, I may approach my sadhana where I feel like Krishna is a part and parcel with me. It's like, I'll give you some time now, Krishna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But actually it's the other way around. Okay. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai,
Jai.
Srila Bhagavatam ki jai,
Jai.
sincere, truthful hearing and chanting ki jai.
Jai.
Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripatyaena Charatitanam Bhavantu Vaishnava Namo Namaha Buddha Vaishnava ki jai. All right, everyone have a great day. Hari Bol.